Here we are in the penthouse of J Bay with none other than legendary Glen D'Arcy. Glen, what a privilege.
Nice to have you here, Steve, and nice to be here.
Lekker. And we were going to shoot it from a different angle, but unfortunately I'm going to get too much light glare. So we're sitting here, and right behind us, we're looking straight down the point. Okay. What's supers? Then we've got...
Supers, then you've got possibles,
Yeah.
then you've got tubes,
Yes.
then you've got salad bowls, then you've got the point,
Yep.
and then you've got albatross,
That's it.
right down the bottom. Yeah.
For all of you that...
Well, and then obviously a new name came along, Neville Andrews.
Yes.
He named this place between impossibles and tubes. He gave it a name, but for the love of me, I can't think of it now, but he did give it a name.
Okay.
And he used to surf there all on his own, Neville Andrews.
Right.
Yeah, in the heyday.
Back in the days.
Yeah.
And where's Magnus? Is just further up?
Magnus is just around the corner, from the car park at
Yeah.
opposite Checkers.
So there we go. Quick little lesson.
Shred and gone. Oh yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to say massive thanks to my associates over at Wavescape. Also, a huge thanks to African Perfection, Sharon and her crew. They really look after me when we come to J Bay. And also, if you're looking for somewhere else to stay, just over the road is Mr. D'Arcy's establishment.
We have at Super's Guest House. We have 4 bedrooms that we rent out, and we have an amazing rooftop veranda where you can see the surf 180-degree view.
Yeah.
And it's on the market if somebody wants to buy it.
There we go. I'll leave all the links down below. Might as well get it out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the cool thing about when you stay at the D'Arcy's is the fact that, you're not just going to rock up and, you're going to hear stories. You're going to get amazing food from your wife, Lauren.
Yeah.
She cooks and she makes breakfasts that are like mind-blowing, legendary stuff.
She has a passion for cooking.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And for storytelling,
Yeah.
as do you. So let's... Sorry.
The name of that surfboard was,
Yes.
they named it Coins.
Coins.
Coins. That's at the end of Impossibles and the beginning of Tubes.
Do you know why they called it coins?
I have no idea, but he just named it Coins. But I remember once surfing a wave all the way down at Impossibles, and I kicked out next to Neville, and I sat there and I said, "How are things going?" He said, "No, the waves are cooking here." And I had one memorable wave there that I'll never ever forget. I took off on this wave, and as I turned off the bottom, the whole wave bent, and you couldn't actually see around. And I actually served it around a bend and came out of the tube around a bend, which I've never really done
That's
in my life
insane,
before.
eh?
It was quite incredible. Yes, it stuck in my mind for a long time.
So that it's barreling, but it's also
It took
it's
off and it
turning.
bent, yeah, and I couldn't see around the other side, but I went around the kind of the corner as such, and then came out the barrel on the other side.
That's insane. Never heard of that before.
Coins, yeah.
It must be called something, that phenomenon.
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, Glen D'Arcy is part of the furniture here in J Bay. He's been here for a very, very long time. We mentioned names like Heinzie, Mickey Dora, Des Sawyer, Glen D'Arcy. I mean, you've been shaping how many years now?
I started first shaping in 1968 on the south coast of Natal when I was still at school. Obviously, my mates and I, we were surfing belly boards. Back then, I had a gun belly board made by somebody in Durban. I can't remember who he was. And then, obviously, we started buying old, long long boards and then sanding the rails and stripping the cloth off and reshaping short boards in the late 60s and early 70s.
Obviously, you bought these old boards, right?
Yeah. No, we acquired them.
Fell off the back of off a woody.
Yeah.
Off an old woody.
No, we used to make them in my mate's garage. He also lived in Warner Beach in Gus Brown Road. And that's where I started. And we ended up making a surfboard for our geography teacher in Standard 9. And he kind of spun out a little bit on too much acid.
So you must have been mates with Gary and Justin Maish's father.
I knew Peter very well. I actually did a shaping stint prior to going to Brazil in 1977.
About that.
Yeah, summer of 76, I ended up doing about 30 surfboards for Peter Maish.
Okay.
I shaped, because he was growing and he was just himself and Isaac, the African guy that used to sand and finish his boards for him.
Yes.
Amazing craftsman that Peter taught. And then, 77, in 74 I met a Brazilian guy because I first came to J Bay in 1970, the December of 1970. And then my brother moved down here, 73, 74, 75. He used to work with Peter Daniels and Kenny Freeland.
Okay.
Making Faith surfboards
Yes.
at kitchen windows. And my brother used to do the sanding and the polishing and foil fins, where PD was the shaper and Kenny was the laminator.
Amazing. So that's early 70s,
That's
eh?
the early 70s. And I met this guy, Horacio, who came over from Brazil. He came to surf these. I mean, he used to sit on the sand dunes and say, am I really surfing this unbelievable wave here? Because, I mean, they came from Rio and the waves were all kind of short, beach breaky type waves.
Yes.
And he was working for Hiko. And he said to me, if you ever want to come to Brazil, he said, get in contact with me because, Brazil, the surfing was a huge merging market then.
Sure.
And they didn't have too many shapers.
Gotcha.
I know that Peter Daniels and Robbie Ponting went and did a shaping stint in Brazil prior to me going there. And I went there and spent 6 months in Brazil. We went to London and then London to Barbados, British Guiana, Suriname, across the Amazon jungle, 66 hours on a bus and ended up in Rio.
And you were there for
6 months. Spent 6 months in Brazil.
And you were there for the Rio Carnival, weren't you?
We had Carnival. We actually arrived in the middle of Carnival. So it's pretty wild.
And I should imagine now we're talking like, off the back of the 60s, the carnivals back then were pretty, as you say, an understatement, wild.
Yeah. No, they were wild. Everything was wild in Brazil at those. They had just come out of a military regime.
Yes.
So things had just changed there. So everybody was, things were kind of loose and everything was
Yes.
kind of happening.
Bit of
and
freedom
going
and-
forward, yeah. So it was wild times. We had a great time in Brazil. If Brazil had good waves, I think I would have moved there years ago. If it had good waves like supers,
Yep.
I would have moved there years ago.
Really, huh?
Yeah, I know. People have a zest for life there. It's just the food's good. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
incredible. So yeah.
Weather's good.
Yeah, we travelled extensively all over Brazil because my wife ended up importing fabrics from Brazil. So we actually used to go to Brazil regularly. I went there about 30 times, and we've been up the Amazon jungle and been so kind of everywhere. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
And you've surfed your way, shaped your way through. Were you shaping a lot those days?
Yes, I mean, geez, in Brazil I shaped 550 surfboards in 6 months.
That's that. We'll have to do that calculation. 560 surfboards
In 5 months.
in 5 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's divided by a month. That's on average 105 a month.
Yeah.
Yo,
Well, Rico, I mean, he was the biggest surfboard manufacturer. I mean,
that's more than 2 boards a day.
we were selling surfboards all over Brazil. I mean, it was booming. Surfing was booming in the 70s.
Under what label?
Hiko
Hiko.
surfboards. Hiko, yeah. Hiko de
Amazing.
Souza.
That's crazy. That's more than 2 boards, hand-shaped,
Hand-shaped.
a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it takes a lot to be made of that sort of stuff these days. Especially the lighties these days, everything comes off the machine and then it's scrub it down.
Well, yes, I was just telling somebody the other day, I mean, the major changes that have happened in the surfing industry is obviously the introduction of computerized shaping machines.
Yes.
Obviously, surfboards have got a lot more refined and obviously a lot more maneuverable than they were in the 70s and the 80s.
Yes.
But we're still using the same materials we used in the 60s, high density polyurethane foam and polyester resin. And I mean, it's too labor intensive. Surfboards, you need to streamline it.
Yeah.
You need to streamline it. Surfboards, the laminating and the sanding process of surfboards.
How would you propose in your mind?
If they could get a fast curing resin, you could hand shape the surfboard. I mean, you could obviously computerize it, finish it off, put the plugs in, hook it up to a conveyor system, dip it into a tank with super fast curing resin.
Got you.
And then pull it out of there. You could put maybe carbon fiber or something in the stringers to stiffen it up a little bit, because obviously the fiberglass does stiffen it up. But you need to eliminate that hand laminating, hand sanding, hand polishing surfboards.
Yeah.
Water
Need to get rid of that.
It's too labor intensive.
Yeah. And so, under what label? Like, run us through your labels. What did you start as?
First started making free flowing surfboards.
Okay.
It was the first label that I made on the South Coast. And then I went and I worked for Sean Thompson after I came back from Brazil in 77, 78, 79, 80. And then came down here in the March of 1980 and met Dave Lipschitz.
Yep.
He was making Levine surfboards at the time at this old fish factory there overlooking kitchen windows. And I was here with my wife, Lauren, and my son, Chad. Chad was probably 2 years old. And I'd just been through our summer season working my butt off at Thompson's. We used to do 6 or 7 different labels, Byrne, Larry Bertelman, Sean Thompson, Town and Country. We did about 5 or 6
Probably
different
Instinct
labels.
as well.
Well, Instinct was Sean's clothing label, but Sean Thompson Surfboards was the label that we were doing at the time. So yeah, I wasn't really into shaping. So I met Lippy and he said, "Don't you want to come and shape some boards?" I said, "No, I just want to come and surf and just enjoy myself." Obviously, the wind came onshore and there was no surf, so I said, "Okay, I'll come and do some boards." And hence, I said to him, "Well, listen, I'm not going to be doing Larry Levine because I said Larry will come back someday from Australia. He was trying to promote his movie that he shot." And so I said, "Okay, let's start a new label." So David had been in the October, November, and the December had been in Hawaii and met Tim and Ron Condon. They had put that Sea Flight movie together, which was the name of the inter-island ferry that went in between the islands.
Yep.
So I said, "Well, let's start making Sea Flight surfboards," which we really did. That was in the April of 1980. We started making Sea Flight surfboards together. And then we were doing probably 25 boards a week, 20 boards a week, hand shaping.
Man. And your hands are still around.
Yeah, we used to, and believe it or not, I used to make loads of kneeboards. We had Bobby Rousseau, Steve Cruikshank, all those kneeboarders in Cape Town. And we used to do probably about 2 or 3 boards a week, send them to Cape Town. That was our biggest market.
Sure.
And then Lippy eventually threw in the towel and opened up Surf Centre in Cape Town.
Yeah.
He went back to Cape Town.
Quite a while, eh? And so, J-Bay back in the day, you were here from 68, huh?
No, it's 1970. I came down here in the December of 70.
Okay.
We were camping in the sand dunes.
Were you also at the sand dunes
the
at
sand
Point?
dunes down at the Point. Yeah, on the upper, not the lower point. First of all, we went to the lower Point.
Yes.
There was a bit of a car park there, but it didn't have any vibe there. So we came up to the other car park where it's all tarred and that. Today that was all dirt and just bush and that. There was Aussie guys that were dug into the sand dunes because it was midsummer, so it was stinking hot, And we all the sappers and that we all hung together there and just camped in the bush there. Yeah.
And what was it? Were there any hairy stories you can tell us about camping down there?
Any hairy stories?
Yeah, as in just funny stories, crazy stories. I know there was a lot of
Well, I'll tell you
everyone partaking of the.
I'll tell you what, the Aussies were very innovative. I must say, what they used to do is they used to get inner car tubes.
Yes.
And they used to cut out, obviously, the sole and then make up a top and then stitch it together. So they made their first booties out of inner tubes from cars.
The tires
inside the cars.
The tube.
Yeah, tubes. And they started making booties. And
There
they
you
were all dug into the sand dunes there. Everybody was smoking dope in those days.
Of course.
It was the 70s and the 80s.
It was like a cigarette back in them days, right?
Yeah, it just wasn't legal.
And just lots of, again, straight out of the 60s, a lot of love, a lot of freedom, a lot of good vibes, right?
Great vibes, eh?
In the water as well, I
Yeah,
dare say.
but there weren't very many guys surfing supers. The furthest we got up the Point was tubes.
Okay.
I know that one day I saw Gavin Rudolph and 1 or 2 other guys sort of ventured out here. I don't think the surfboards were quite conducive to the speed of the wave. Back then, this wave has changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's not the same as what it was in the 70s and the 80s. With the sand that moves around this point here, it gets a big flat section in it because there's not a lot of sand from the Crom River and from Bruce's, those big sand dunes in the early days. If you see aerial photos, that went all the way from Bruce's all the way to Oyster Bay.
Really, eh?
Yep, the sand used to blow into the ocean.
And are you saying, it's gotten worse?
It gets fatter. It doesn't stand up all the way like it did in the 70s and the 80s. And going into the 90s, because this car park here was a huge sand dune here.
Yes.
So the wind used to blow a lot of sand into the ocean from here. The damming up of the Crom River, there's no more sand because that whole estuary of the Crom River is all silted up now.
Got you.
All that sand used to go into the ocean. So we used to have a lot more sand, and also in the early days when the waves got bigger, it used to churn up, so it actually got quite dirty. The waves weren't, clean like they are now.
Okay.
It used to get a lot. Just this colour with the sand that used to get churned up in it.
Yeah.
So, it definitely has changed a lot. I remember days where we used to protect yourself from the howling southwesterly with the sand blowing off the sand dunes.
Really?
Yeah.
Sure.
So it has changed. There is a big flat section when it gets like 6 to 8 foot.
Similar things happened here as to what's happened at Bruce's in terms of all the houses and the sand not being able to get into the ocean.
Bruce's, all that development, all those houses and that, so there's no more sand that actually gets blown into the ocean.
Interesting. So obviously a lot of single fins, few 20s, but
Back
predominantly
then, predominantly
single, right?
single fins. Obviously the guys were playing around with twin fins, but they were exceptionally wide, sort of, and with the fins very far back. Yeah, we made quite a lot of those in the early 70s. My mate that I was making surfboards with, his up in Durban, his brother-in-law, obviously married, he was an Aussie guy, and he was a pretty good shaper and a surfer, and he kind of turned us on to a lot of these shorter, wider square tails with the twin fins a lot further back. So yeah, we kind of did the whole full circle.
And so here in J Bay at that time, your contemporaries were also shapers like Des Sawyer. Who else?
Kenny Freeland.
Kenny Freeland.
Peter Daniel, PD was here. Robbie Ponting was making surfboards here.
Okay.
When we first came down in the 70s, Max Wetland was living here.
Oh, Max was down here.
Yeah, he's living overlooking, just before Magnatubes, the left-hander at Boneyard.
Yeah.
He was living in a house there making surfboards. Max
All right.
Wetland was making surfboards there. He was here.
Was Funny Herfel here at the time?
Tony Van was living down in the Caballero. He'd just come back from
Okay.
America. He'd kind of spun out a little bit.
Yeah, he went
Too
for
much Californian sunshine after
yes,
the
yeah.
World
And the
Champs.
Scooby-Doo bus.
And he was living in the green house right down there at other side of Albatross. He was
Okay.
living down there.
Yeah, I've heard some good stories out of that trip to California.
Well, Tony ended up living in the Milkwoods here in the latter part of his life. He camped in here.
Oh, shame, man.
Yeah,
In the bush.
in the bush.
And
In the
so,
bush.
how have you? I mean, you've been here. You've seen the change in J Bay. It's obviously, I mean, arguably the best right-hand point break in the world, and with it comes the influx of surfers, right? Positives and negatives.
Well, listen, I mean, if you think about it, Jeffreys Bay is still probably one of the least crowded surf spots in the world. I mean, I had an American guy here the other day, and he said to me, and the wood, it was slightly onshore and there was waves. He said, if this was California, it'd be 150 guys down at the point. I mean, here, the most I saw last year was 75 guys out here on a 6 to 8 foot day.
Sure.
So, and obviously the internet's made the world a small place.
Yes.
I mean, everybody can hook onto the whatever cameras or whatever's, and they can see what's going on, look at the weather forecast going forward, fly in from Durban, from Cape Town, travel up. So yeah, it's made it a smaller place, but it's still, I mean, it's still one of the most uncrowded surf spots in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And it's obviously what negatives? I mean, obviously progress. You can't stop progress. It's
Inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
People during COVID, so many holiday homes here. People from Joburg, from Cape Town, from Durban had holiday homes here. And people thought, well, okay, during COVID, why must I stay in Durban or Cape Town? And they all moved down here. And a lot of them have stayed here.
Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of people they commute to Joburg on maybe the husband's commute or the wife's commute or whatever the case may be. But the kids are all at school here. And it's grown, and what can you do? You can't help progress, eh?
Yeah, that's it. You can dig your heels in for so long, but it's going to overtake you. So you've got to kind of move.
You got to move with it.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a good thing. In a way, it's not a good thing. But I mean, you can't. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
But it also allows people who are custodians of this break and who love the break to be able to live here because it brings in revenue for them and put food on the table. So there's also that conversation, and one could go down a rabbit hole with that.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, if you're lucky if you get a flippin' wave at pipe, when it's cranking, you'd be lucky.
Yeah.
But here, if you show respect, wait your turn, put a smile on your dial, you'll get a wave.
Come and sit in the inside section.
it.
You could surf it all the way down to coins, and then not quite tubes, but unless it's the right wave. But
Yeah.
you don't see too many waves ridden all the way down to the point anymore. But you do on the odd occasion. But yeah, it happens.
What's that? It's a 1 kilometer wave almost.
It's
isn't
about
it?
a kilometer. Yeah.
1 kilometer. You get one wave, you walk in, and you go home, and you just and say that's.
I've seen Derek Hand on a couple of waves, but I mean, he's finless surfboards. He doesn't seem to make them much anymore, but
used to.
He's brave.
I did a calculation last year. Apparently, we made 24 million. 24 million surfboards were sold globally.
24 million.
24 million.
Okay.
And then
Well, I mean, surfing is definitely growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I divided it out, and I said, I'll take 5% of that number, and I'll spread it over the world's top 50 breaks. How many surfers do you think would be at each of those top 50 breaks with those new boards?
I wouldn't know.
On it, 142.
142.
At each of those 50 breaks. So yeah, surfing is like booming.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, America holds 70% of that market share.
And Australia must be pretty big too,
Pretty
eh?
big, yeah.
I mean, Indo's growing. I mean, obviously, but a lot of people. I mean, a lot of foreigners they go through Indo. But I mean, the local population is also surfing a lot there too.
But you've had it's fair to say that living here in J Bay, the community that you've been a part of, your surfing sort of heritage and your shaping, you've had a blessed life.
Absolutely. You know what? I mean, our guest house is for sale. I'm not going to move anywhere else. Just that I just don't want to do breakfast and be running a guest house. You know, I just want to enjoy. I mean, like, I'm 70 now, so I want to enjoy the latter part in the next 10 years of my life. Ideally, I want to do a bit of traveling. I'd like to go to Namibia, where I've never been.
Yep.
I'd like to go to Botswana, and I'd love to go to Kenya, and I'd love to go to Malawi.
Do a bit of traveling.
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled extensively all around the world. I've never really travelled on my doorstep, so I'd love to go and see bits of Southern Africa.
So you see, this helped Glenn fulfill his final dream to go, buy his house.
You can live in a beautiful guest house overlooking
Right here on
Super Tube.
Supers.
I mean, I think it was quite incredible the way I met Mickey Dora, actually through a friend of mine, who was a DJ in a nightclub in La Peniche at the back of Saint Sebastian in France. And we were sitting at the car park at Guitry and introduced me to Mickey Dora, that we had just come back from Brazil in 1977. And he was driving this green Mercedes van. Well, he didn't actually drive it, it was stationary. I mean, he was just camped out there at Guitry at the surf spot. And this huge swell came through. We met this crazy American guy, Keith Noel, 6'6", blonde-headed guy who was just amped to surf anything. And he said to us, come. Guitry was like probably 15 to 18 foot, closing out a bit. He said, come, we're going to Mundaka. I mean, I'd heard about Mundaka when I was in Mauritius in 74. I met an Aussie guy that was a very good friend of Wayne Lynch's. What's his name? Martin. Anyway, I can't remember his
So
first
Wayne
name.
is Barton's brother, isn't he?
No.
Not related?
No. So anyway, he said to me, if you ever get to Europe, Keith Martin was a good friend of Wayne Lynch's. He said, if you ever get to Europe, go to Spain. He said, there's an amazing left-hander called Mundaka. So here we are at the car park.
You goofy?
No, I'm natural footer, so I was on backside. So, I spent 6 months in Mauritius in 74 surfing Tamarin Bay. I mean, that was unbelievable. Not the most consistent surf spot, but had perfect 6 to 8 foot waves there. Sure. So we in the car park. He said, come, let's go. We're going to Mundaka. So I was with Lauren at the time. My wife, she was pregnant with Chad. My mate, Mark Chadwick, Keith Noel, and Mickey said, can I come with you guys? So I said, well, yeah, we're going for the weekend. We're not just going to go for one day. We're going for the weekend. Yeah. So then we put all the surfboards on the roof of the car. Mickey had the surfboard that was made by Balon, but it had ping pong balls in the inside. It wasn't foam. It was made from ping pong balls, because he was very alternative, Mickey Dora. He was always surfing something different, and he was
the core was just ping pong balls.
Ping pong balls, yeah.
Interesting. That's a new one, eh? Like Kobus at Wawa, he uses wine
corks.
Corks.
The corks, yeah. No,
but I've never heard of ping pong balls.
This was ping pong balls. Probably, yeah. So anyway, we head to Mundaka, and in the old days, to go to Mundaka, I believe now you go on the highway and you turn off, you go along the river, next to the river that flows out. Have you been to Mundaka? Mm-mm. It's a little fishing village. Yeah. And next to it, this river runs out next to it, obviously, and then it deposits the sand. There's like a big rock and the entrance to the harbour. And then you just jump off into the deep channel, and then next to the big rock, and you're sitting off at the takeoff spot. So it's an easy paddle out. Yeah. But the Spanish guys would never, I mean, that's all new to them surfing and back then in 77. So they wouldn't surf over 4 or 5 foot waves. So it was 6 to 8 foot. As we came over this rise, we just saw these perfect left-handers just winding down the point. And this crazy American guy, Keith, he was jumping up and down. Before he even got there, he had his wetsuit on and he was out there. Mark and I, we put our wetsuits on. We ended up paddling at Dora. He just walked up and down, sussed it out. Backhand surfing wasn't his favourite. But I mean, he was into it. So anyway, we go and we surf perfect 6 to 8 foot waves with like 6 guys in the water. The 4 of us and 2 other guys.
That's a cool memory.
And Dora got gassed on one wave. His leg rope broke, and I didn't know he was an asthmatic, but he had an asthma attack. So he makes it up to the beach, and something happened to his surfboard. It just disappeared. I think it ended up going into the rip up the river, and the fishermen, obviously, they come up
Yes.
in their boats, and they must have seen the surfboard because this was going on dusk now, and they picked up the board, and that was it. Never to be seen again. So,
ping pong
so
board.
Dora went on a bit of a bummer because he didn't have a surfboard, and plus, I
Okay.
mean, he'd been bowling some chick, and he had the clap, and he was on medication. And
Oh my word!
so yeah, he
So
was.
he was a bit moody.
He was very moody. Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't. They're staying in a little pension, and we were staying in the combi in the graveyard at the top of Mundaka. There's a graveyard where it looks right down on the surf. So we were sleeping in the combi up there. So.
That's a story for the
Yeah.
books.
So anyway, so we went round the corner the next day and surfed these perfect little at Laredo. We went and surfed these perfect A-frame lefts and rights. And Dora was whinging. He wanted to go back to France. And anyway, we ended up going back. My wife had a bit of a fallout with him, telling me she should hang out with people his own age. And hence he came to South Africa probably about 3 or 4 years later. He came to J-Bay, and yeah, we met him. Yeah, came back here to J-Bay.
He'd grown up a little.
Not
much.
He hadn't changed much. He was still the bludger. I mean, Mickey. Oh, funny story. I've got to tell you a story. I don't know if I've told this to you. Mickey Dora was on the hop from the law after him because he pulled quite a lot of scams, and he had the speed contest that he was going to do, and this was in the 60s. He was going to have a speed contest at Malibu. They were going to have 2 boys, and I think it was like $50 entrance fee, which back then was a lot of money. And they were going to surf and time you from the first buoy to the end of the ride, and whoever surfed the quickest would win the contest.
Yeah.
The day of the contest came, Mickey Dora was nowhere to be found, and he wrote an article. He was in New Zealand. He said, "I was there. I surfed so fast. I took the money and ran."
Classic. That's classic. Oh, that's a classic Mickey story. Eh?
Yeah.
And so, at what point, like when you were here in J-Bay, were you were your boards going overseas, or were your boards staying within South Africa?
In the beginning, Sea Flight surfboards, we were just doing surfboards for the local market. We were doing about 20 boards a week, and the majority of them were going to Cape Town. Obviously, a lot of youngsters. We had David. I mean, David was very good at marketing, and he had a very good surf team that we developed over the years.
Yes.
And David was always involved in contests, so he was always at the contest. I was never really involved with contests. I was always in the background, but he was the front man.
Yep.
And he did a good job. I mean, and so we built up a very big team here in PE. And we used to, and then obviously when he moved to Cape Town, I mean, obviously we still fed him with lots of surfboards. And then obviously the mid-80s, windsurfing became quite big, so we used to do quite a lot of wave riding boards.
Okay.
Did quite a lot of windsurfers.
And when did you switch to your own label, Glen?
Towards the latter part of the 80s.
Okay.
Kenny and myself made J-Bay Surf and Sail. We did J-Bay Surf and Sail, where he did Faith surfboards. He used to shape and laminate.
Okay.
And I used to shape and laminate my own Sea Flight surfboards. And then, towards the end of the 80s, I went on my own. Kenny, he got involved in the squid industry. And he was involved, so I continued making surfboards, Glen D'Arcy surf designs in the latter part of the 80s until probably last year. I did my last export order to Germany. Well, I did a lot of boards for a guy in Germany, Norden Surfboards.
Okay.
Over the years, I did surfboards for 10 years for him. And I did about 30 longboards. So that was the last big order that I did, like 35 boards for him, mainly longboards and mid-length mini melts. And that was kind of me. I kind of threw in the towel. I've shaped a few for my son and my grandsons and a few friends and whatever. But I'm not really involved in full-time manufacturing of surfboards anymore.
And if you had to pick one board that would sum up your surfing and your style of surfing, what shape would it be?
Well, I'll tell you what, the twin fins were quite very revolutionary. The only thing is what you needed, a lot of times there was a little bit of skate in the tail of the twin fins.
Yeah.
But then obviously we started putting the deeper channels running through the tails of the boards, and then maybe little trailer fins. But I think that the 20s made serious changes to the surfboards, the maneuverability and the down-the-line surfing on surfboards. But I think obviously the conventional thruster finally took over from everybody. The single concave into the double concave bottoms. Yeah, but I mean, everybody's played around with the variables. I mean, I see guys doing asymmetrical surfboards. We made a few of those in the early days. But I think that what most people are surfing today is the conventional three fin thrust.
Yeah, well, it's
I
what
mean,
we
that
learned.
with Simon Edison, the introduction of those in the early 80s. I mean, that was probably one of the major changes. But I mean, the old 20s used to go good. I mean, I've got a 30-year-old twin fin. I don't know, actually, it's 40 years old that I lent to Lucas Silveira. He won the Junior World Champions in 2017, I think. And he said to me one day, he said, haven't you got an old twin fin or something that I can surf out here? So I said, yeah, I've got a 5'9" twin fin with, it's a twin fin, but it's got a little sort of like S fin in the tail.
Yes.
So he said, well, I'd like to surf it.
I remember he was here. It was like last year sometime.
Year before last.
Yeah.
And he came out of the water and he said to me, it was the best tube riding board he's ever surfed in his life.
Wow.
And he wrote that on the board. He said, the best tubes I've ever had. It came off the bottom nice, a little bit edgy because the rails are quite a little bit knifey. They weren't kind of softened all the way through, but he said it really held in nicely off the bottom. And in the barrel, he said the tube rode the best that he's ever had. But off the top, it was a bit sticky.
Okay.
But he said,
But it just
besides
sat
that,
there.
it sat, he said, off the bottom and in the tube. And he wrote on there, the best tubes that Supers ever. And he signed it. I've got it in my garage. It was 40 years old.
Yep, I think Ricky Basnett would concur. He loves a 20.
Yeah.
And that boy can surf barrels.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you wanted to have to say?
What else can I say? Well,
How many boards, if you were to just give us a little
a thumb suck.
how many boards have you hand shaped in your life?
Well, I mean, I had the first computerized shaping machine in South Africa. I bought it from Brazil, from Luciana, yeah. He was an ear, nose and throat specialist, but his passionate was electronics. But I think I was a bit before my time. But hand shaping surfboards, I think I must have done probably between 40 to 45,000 surfboards.
That's incredible.
I used to go back to Brazil every year in shape after 77. I went back for 10 years and I used to go and shape like 50, 60, 70 surfboards in 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks.
40 to 50,000. So let's say your shaping career has been the last 50 years. That's 10,000 boards per year.
Yeah.
No, per 10,000 boards per decade.
Yeah, per decade.
It's 1,000 boards per year.
Yeah, divided by 12
Is it's
Hey,
like
12
on
is
average 100 boards
a month.
a month.
Yeah.
120 boards a month.
Yeah, when I went from Brazil to Europe, to France, I met this guy that actually owns Puka surfboards.
Yes.
Inigo. And I met him. He was making Geronimo surfboards in Laredo, and he heard that I was around. And he said, don't you want to come and shape some surfboards for me? So I just come from Brazil. And we were in Mundaka, and obviously met him in Mundaka, and then went around the corner, and he had like 40 or 50 blanks. I ended up shaping a lot of surfboards for him.
That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Yeah, I mean, you just can't begin to imagine the amount of work, hard graft that's gone into like that amount of surfboards.
Well, you get into a system, and obviously, we used to make variables and make slight changes and whatever, but there was a constant that you actually, format that I used to shape to. I used to measure my rails. Obviously, after the computerized shaping machine, I used to measure at 30 centimeter from the nose, 30 centimeter from the tail.
Gotcha.
You band your rails in it. So it made life easier that you work to a system, Obviously, you had your rocker sticks and have subtle changes and, play around with the variables. But yeah, there was a system that you kind of worked to.
And when you got into the shaping bay, no music?
I always had music. Yeah, I never had headphones, but we had
the
60s,
70s classic.
Crosby, Stills,
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Surfboard shaping. So the surfboard industry is a labor of love. I'll tell you that right now. Eh? But I mean, obviously, the computers make it a lot easier. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, these kids today, you can design a board and you just scrub them. But I mean, I'd be interesting to see if you give them a knee board and give them a mid-length, a mini-mal, and a long board, and say, yeah, guys, shape me some 3 boards from scratch and see how they come out.
Let's see
Be interesting.
See what you come back
See
with.
what you come up with, yeah.
That's cool. Glenn, it's been an absolute treat. Mr. Glen D'Arcy, legendary surfboard shaper. What else would you label yourself as beyond a surfboard shaper? Ocean lover.
Well, unfortunately, I don't do much surfing anymore. I've kind
I'd say a bit of a wildcat as well in your
injured my
day.
knee in '77. Yeah, I mean, you have a zest for life. I still want the things I want to do before I get to beyond 80.
Exactly. That's a good idea.
Enjoy the latter part of my life. Yeah, I mean, obviously, my wife's been a great companion of mine throughout my whole life. We've been together since she was 14 and I was 19.
That's
And we
incredible.
traveled to Brazil together
That's incredible.
in '77.
So what's your anniversary? How many years?
We were 40 in 1980. It was 43 years.
Yeah.
43
43 years.
years.
And I tell you what, when you meet a woman like Lauren, sure, she's like a ball of energy, fire, positivity. And I think you two were like, you must have had this like little code between each other. If we're gonna be naughty and we're gonna have fun, we're gonna do it together.
Yeah, which we did. We did it together. Yeah.
There we go. And that's the recipe for a good marriage.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do something, just
Do it together.
Do it together
Yeah.
and have fun.
And enjoy life. And yeah,
Exactly.
life's short. You need to enjoy it. Make the most of it.
All the links will be down below for Glen D'Arcy's property, his links to his website will be down below. So if you want to come check it out, come stay at Supers. Also, thank you again to African Perfection. Thank you, African Perfection. Glenn, absolute pleasure.
Thank
you
you.
very much
Okay,
for your
mate.
time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Can you look at the camera and say, I'm Glen D'Arcy and I've been shredding the gnar with Steve Shooter.
Hi, I'm Glen D'Arcy. I've been shredding the gnar with Steve Shooter.
There we go. Cheers.
Steve,
Thank you.
thank you.
Shred and